In a world where royal protocols dictate every gesture and tradition governs every moment, sometimes the most genuine happiness comes from the simplest acts of human kindness. Picture this: a woman who has spent decades learning to navigate the complex world of monarchy, standing in a small Welsh community center, surrounded not by grand palace walls or formal courtiers, but by ordinary people whose only agenda is to celebrate her special day. The aroma of freshly baked cake fills the air, children's laughter echoes through the room, and for just a moment, the weight of a crown seems to disappear. This is not a story about royal duty or state occasions. This is about the magic that happens when genuine warmth meets unexpected generosity, when a community decides to honor someone not because protocol demands it, but because their hearts move them to act. What unfolds is a reminder that beneath every title, every position of authority, every public figure beats the heart of someone who treasures the same simple joys we all do. The woman at the center of this story has traveled a remarkable journey from being one of Britain's most controversial figures to becoming its beloved queen consort. But today, in this small Welsh town, none of that matters. Today, she is simply someone celebrating another year of life, surrounded by people who chose to make her day special. The cake that awaits her is more than flour, sugar, and eggs baked together. It represents something far more precious: acceptance, celebration, and the universal language of kindness that transcends all barriers. This is the story of how a simple birthday cake became a symbol of transformation, community spirit, and the enduring power of human connection. It begins with a phone call, a generous idea, and a group of people who believe that everyone deserves to feel special on their birthday, even a queen. The morning air in Winnipia carried the familiar scent of Welsh valleys, a mixture of fresh rain and centuries-old earth that had witnessed countless stories unfold. Sarah Jenkins stood at her kitchen window, watching the mist roll across the hillsides as she sipped her tea. As the coordinator of the local community center, she had seen many important visitors over the years, but never anyone quite like the guest they were expecting today. 3 weeks earlier, a crisp official letter had arrived at the center, bearing the unmistakable seal of the royal household. Sarah had read it twice, then called her colleague Mary to read it again, just to be certain. Queen Camilla would be visiting their small community as part of her tour of Welsh literacy programs. The visit was scheduled for July 17th, which Sarah's sharp memory quickly identified as the Queen's birthday. The realization struck her like a bolt of inspiration. Here was someone who would spend her birthday working, visiting communities, and fulfilling royal duties instead of celebrating with family and friends. The idea seemed almost heartbreaking to Sarah, a woman who believed that everyone, regardless of their station in life, deserved to feel special on their birthday. That evening, Sarah had called an emergency meeting of the community center's volunteer committee. The response was immediate and unanimous. Margaret Davies, whose Welsh cakes had won county competitions for 3 consecutive years, volunteered to create something special. Tom Phillips, the local florist, offered to provide decorations without charge. Even young Emma Roberts, barely 16 and often shy around adults, suggested they organize the local children's choir to sing. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of preparation that went far beyond the usual protocols for royal visits. While the official arrangements focused on security briefings, crowd control, and the formal presentation of the literacy program, the community was planning something entirely different. They were planning a celebration. Margaret Davies spent hours perfecting her recipe. She wanted something that honored both Welsh traditions and the occasion's significance. After numerous trials that filled her kitchen with delicious aromas and her family with willing taste testers, she settled on a magnificent 3-layer Victoria sponge cake. But this was no ordinary cake. Each layer would be infused with subtle flavors that told a story: Welsh honey from local beehives, organic eggs from farms in the Rhondda Valley, and butter from cows that grazed on the same hills the Queen would see during her visit. The decoration proved to be an artwork in itself. Margaret's granddaughter, studying art at university, suggested incorporating elements that reflected both the Queen's interests and their local heritage. They decided on delicate sugar flowers that mirrored the wildflowers growing along the Welsh countryside, and elegant piping that echoed the patterns found in traditional Celtic designs. Meanwhile, Tom Phillips was transforming the community center into something magical. He understood that royal visits usually meant formal, restrained decorations, but this was different. This was a birthday party. He gathered wildflowers from the valleys, arranged them in simple glass jars that sparkled like jewels when the light hit them. The effect was stunning yet understated, elegant but warm. The children's preparation became the talk of the town. Emma Roberts had overcome her shyness to organize 12 local children, ranging in age from 7 to 14, into a choir that would sing Pen BLWYDD Hapus, the Welsh version of Happy Birthday. Their rehearsals in the community center each evening drew small crowds of parents and neighbors, all of whom found themselves humming the tune long after the children had gone home. But perhaps the most touching preparation was happening in the homes throughout Winnipia. Word had spread about the birthday surprise, and residents who had never met the Queen, who might never meet her again, began contributing in their own ways. Mrs. Evans, who lived alone since her husband's passing, spent evenings creating a handmade birthday card using pressed flowers from her garden. The card's message was simple: wishing you joy on your special day from all of us in Wales. The local primary school children, not to be outdone by the choir, created individual birthday drawings. Each child drew what they imagined made the Queen happy: corgis playing in gardens, castles surrounded by rainbows, and, surprisingly often, simple scenes of families gathered around kitchen tables sharing meals. Their teacher, Mrs. Williams, collected these drawings into a special album that captured the innocent joy and pure intentions of young hearts. As the day approached, the excitement in Winnipia was palpable. This was more than a royal visit. It had become a community celebration that had brought neighbors together in ways they hadn't experienced in years. The local pub buzzed with conversations about the upcoming visit. The grocery store became an informal meeting place where residents shared updates on their contributions to the celebration. The night before the visit, Sarah Jenkins couldn't sleep. She walked through the community center one final time, checking every detail. The cake, magnificent in its simple elegance, sat in the refrigerated case, waiting for its moment. The flowers Tom had arranged seemed to glow in the dim light. The children's artwork adorned the walls, each piece a testament to the pure excitement of youth. But as Sarah stood there in the quiet center, she realized something profound had happened during these weeks of preparation. The community hadn't just prepared a birthday surprise for the Queen. They had rediscovered something special about themselves. They had remembered what it felt like to come together for the simple purpose of making someone else happy. The security advance team had visited twice, taking photographs, measuring distances, and reviewing protocols. They had been professional, but seemed puzzled by some of the preparations. When one officer asked about the additional decorative elements not mentioned in the official program, Sarah had simply smiled and said, "We wanted to make sure our guest feels welcome." Dr. Elizabeth Morgan, the head of the literacy program that was the official reason for the visit, had initially expressed concern about deviating from the planned schedule. But when Sarah explained their intentions, she found herself moved by the community's generosity. She agreed to adjust the timing slightly to accommodate what she began to think of as the birthday moment. The local media had caught wind of the story, but Sarah had politely declined interviews. This wasn't about publicity or recognition. This was about something more fundamental: the belief that acts of kindness, no matter how small, have the power to transform ordinary moments into extraordinary memories. As Sarah finally locked the community center and headed home through the quiet streets of Winnipia, she thought about the journey that had brought them to this moment. 3 weeks ago, they had been simply another community preparing for a routine royal visit. Tomorrow, they would be the people who decided that a queen deserved to feel the warmth of genuine celebration on her birthday. The Welsh valleys held many stories, but tomorrow they would witness something special. Tomorrow, protocol would meet heart, duty would encounter joy, and a simple birthday cake would become the centerpiece of a moment that no one present would ever forget. The stage was set, the community was ready, and in a few hours, they would discover whether their gesture of kindness would touch the heart of someone who had touched so many hearts herself. The morning of July 17th dawned crisp and clear over the Rhondda Valley, as if nature itself wanted to ensure perfect conditions for the day ahead. By 8 o'clock, the streets of Winnipia were already bustling with activity that far exceeded the usual pace of life in this small Welsh community. Residents who typically wouldn't emerge from their homes until mid-morning were already positioning themselves along the route where the royal car would pass. Sarah Jenkins arrived at the community center before sunrise, her heart racing with a mixture of excitement and nervousness that had kept her awake most of the night. As she unlocked the doors, she was greeted by the sight of Margaret Davies, already waiting with a large covered container that could only hold the birthday cake. Margaret's eyes sparkled with the satisfaction of someone who knew they had created something special. She had risen at 4 in the morning to add the final touches to her masterpiece, carefully positioning each sugar flower and adding delicate gold leaf accents that caught the early morning light streaming through the center's windows. The cake was more than a dessert. It was a work of art that represented the collective hopes and good wishes of an entire community. Tom Phillips arrived shortly after, his van loaded with additional flowers that would transform the already beautiful space into something truly magical. He had spent hours selecting blooms that would create the perfect atmosphere. Cheerful daffodils that symbolized Wales, elegant roses that spoke of celebration, and wildflowers that brought the natural beauty of the valleys indoors. The children began arriving at 9 o'clock, each one scrubbed clean and dressed in their finest clothes. Emma Roberts, their young conductor, carried herself with a newfound confidence that had emerged during weeks of preparation. The children's excitement was infectious, their voices carrying across the center as they practiced their Welsh birthday song one final time. Dr. Elizabeth Morgan arrived precisely at 9:30, accompanied by officials from the royal household who immediately began reviewing the final arrangements. Sarah watched nervously as they examined every detail, hoping their additions to the official program would be received as intended. When one of the officials noticed the birthday decorations, Dr. Morgan stepped forward with a warm smile. The community wanted to acknowledge that today is Her Majesty's birthday, she explained. They prepared something rather special. The official, a woman in her 50s with kind eyes, nodded approvingly. Her Majesty always appreciates genuine gestures of kindness, she said. This is quite lovely. By 10 o'clock, the crowd outside had grown to include residents from neighboring communities who had heard about the celebration. Word had spread through the valleys with the speed that only good news can achieve, bringing people together in a spontaneous show of support and joy. Mrs. Evans stood near the front of the crowd, clutching her handmade birthday card with hands that trembled slightly from excitement rather than age. She had lived through many royal visits over her 83 years, but none had felt quite like this one. This felt personal, meaningful in a way that transcended ceremony and protocol. The primary school children had been given special permission to attend, their artwork displayed prominently inside the community center. Their teacher, Mrs. Williams, found herself as excited as her young charges. She had taught for over 20 years, but had never been part of anything quite like this celebration. At 10:45, a ripple of excitement moved through the waiting crowd as security vehicles appeared in the distance. The moment everyone had been preparing for was finally arriving. Sarah took a deep breath and gathered the core volunteers around her for a final check. The cake sat perfectly positioned on a table decorated with Welsh flags and fresh flowers. The children stood in formation, their choir arranged in neat rows with Emma Roberts at the front, her conductor's baton held with ceremonial importance. The handmade birthday card and children's artwork were ready for presentation. The official cars moved slowly through the streets, allowing the gathered residents to catch glimpses of their royal visitor. From the community center windows, Sarah could see people waving enthusiastically, their faces bright with genuine joy and anticipation. At precisely 11 o'clock, the royal car pulled up to the community center. The crowd's excitement reached a crescendo as Queen Camilla emerged, resplendent in a sky-blue coat that seemed to reflect the perfect Welsh morning. Her smile was immediate and genuine as she acknowledged the warm welcome from the gathered residents. Dr. Morgan stepped forward to make the formal introductions, but it was clear from the Queen's demeanor that she had already sensed something special about this visit. Her eyes took in the decorations visible through the center's windows, the excited faces of the children, and the palpable atmosphere of celebration that surrounded the entire scene. "Your Majesty," Dr. Morgan began, "the community has prepared something rather special in honor of your visit." As they entered the community center, Queen Camilla paused for a moment, her expression showing genuine surprise and delight at the transformation that had taken place. The space, typically functional and modest, had been turned into a beautiful celebration venue that managed to maintain its warm, community atmosphere while honoring the significance of the occasion. The children's choir immediately captured her attention. Emma Roberts, finding courage she didn't know she possessed, stepped forward and curtsied perfectly before speaking in clear, confident Welsh followed by English translation. "Your Majesty, we would like to sing for you because today is your birthday and everyone deserves to have their birthday celebrated." The simplicity and sincerity of the statement seemed to touch something deep within the Queen. Her smile broadened, and she nodded encouragingly to the young choir director. What followed was a performance that would be remembered by everyone present for the rest of their lives. 12 young voices rose in perfect harmony, singing Pin BLWYDED Hapus with such genuine joy and enthusiasm that the entire room seemed to glow with warmth. The Queen watched with obvious delight, occasionally mouthing the words and clapping along with the rhythm. When the song ended, the applause was thunderous, led by Queen Camilla herself. She approached each child, speaking with them individually, asking their names and ages, and showing genuine interest in their responses. Several of the younger children, initially shy, found themselves chatting comfortably with their royal visitor about school, their favorite subjects, and their hopes for the summer holidays. Mrs. Evans stepped forward next, her handmade card trembling slightly in her weathered hands. "Your Majesty," she said in a voice that carried the musical lilt of Wales, "I made this for you because I thought you might like to know that we're thinking of you on your special day." Queen Camilla accepted the card with both hands, examining the pressed flowers and reading the heartfelt message inside. For a moment, emotion flickered across her face, and those closest to her could see how deeply the simple gesture had moved her. "This is absolutely beautiful," she said, her voice carrying genuine warmth. "Thank you so much. I shall treasure this." The children's artwork presentation followed, with Mrs. Williams explaining how each piece represented the young artist's imagination about what made the Queen happy. Queen Camilla spent considerable time examining each drawing, commenting on the details, and asking to meet each young artist. But it was when Sarah Jenkins approached with the birthday cake that the true magic of the moment revealed itself. The Queen's expression showed complete surprise and genuine delight as Margaret Davies' masterpiece was presented to her. The cake was stunning in its elegant simplicity. 3 perfect layers rose gracefully, decorated with sugar flowers so delicate they seemed to have been plucked from the Welsh countryside moments before. The craftsmanship was evident in every detail, from the perfectly smooth buttercream to the artistic arrangement of decorative elements that told the story of Wales through edible art. "We thought," Sarah said, her voice steady despite her racing heart, "that everyone deserves to have a proper birthday cake, especially when they're spending their birthday working to help others." The Queen stood quietly for a moment, taking in not just the beautiful cake, but the faces surrounding her, each one glowing with pride and joy at their collective accomplishment. In that moment, the protocols and formalities that usually govern royal visits seemed to fade away, replaced by something much more precious: The simple human connection that occurs when people come together to celebrate each other. The silence that followed Sarah's words was profound, filled with anticipation and the collective held breath of an entire community. Queen Camilla stood before the magnificent birthday cake, her expression a mixture of surprise, delight, and something deeper that those present would later describe as genuine emotion. The moment stretched beautifully, as if time itself wanted to honor the significance of what was unfolding. Margaret Davies watched anxiously from the side, her hands clasped together as she waited for the royal reaction to weeks of careful planning and hopeful anticipation. She had baked thousands of cakes over her lifetime, but none had carried such importance or represented so many people's good wishes. "This is absolutely extraordinary," Queen Camilla finally said, her voice carrying a warmth that seemed to embrace everyone in the room. "I cannot tell you how touched I am by this incredible kindness." She moved closer to the cake, examining the intricate details with the appreciation of someone who understood the skill and care required to create such beauty. Her fingers traced the air above the delicate sugar flowers, careful not to disturb the artistry, while clearly marveling at the craftsmanship. "The work that has gone into this is simply amazing," she continued, looking directly at Margaret. "You are clearly a master at your craft." Margaret's face flushed with pride and pleasure. At 72, she had never expected to receive such praise from royalty, but more than that, she had never expected to see such genuine appreciation for the art of baking that had been her passion for decades. Dr. Morgan stepped forward, producing a small cake knife that had been hastily procured from the community center's kitchen. "Perhaps Your Majesty would like to make the traditional first cut." The suggestion created a moment of delightful chaos as everyone realized they were about to witness something unprecedented. A queen cutting her own birthday cake in a Welsh community center, surrounded by people who had planned this surprise out of pure kindness. Emma Roberts, still glowing from the success of the choir performance, raised her hand tentatively. "Your Majesty, should we sing Happy Birthday again while you cut the cake? That's what we do at birthday parties." The question, asked with the innocent logic of youth, brought laughter from the adults and a delighted smile from Queen Camilla. "What a wonderful idea," she replied. "I would love that very much." As the Queen positioned the knife above the cake, the children's choir spontaneously began singing Happy Birthday in English, their voices soon joined by every adult in the room. The sound was joyful and slightly chaotic, exactly as birthday songs should be. Even the security personnel and royal officials found themselves humming along. Queen Camilla made the ceremonial first cut with obvious care, ensuring she preserved as much of Margaret's artistic work as possible. The cake revealed itself to be as perfect inside as out, with layers that were evenly baked and filling that looked professionally crafted. "Now this," she said, accepting a small piece on a paper plate decorated with Welsh dragons. "This is what I call a proper birthday cake." The first taste brought a genuine expression of pleasure to the Queen's face. Margaret had achieved exactly what she hoped for, a cake that tasted as wonderful as it looked. The combination of Welsh honey, fresh local ingredients, and skilled technique had created something truly special. "Margaret, this is absolutely delicious," Queen Camilla said, taking another bite. "The flavor is just perfect. You must give me the recipe." The request delighted Margaret beyond measure. The idea that her humble kitchen creation might find its way into royal cookbooks seemed almost too wonderful to believe. "Of course, Your Majesty. I would be honored." What followed was perhaps the most extraordinary part of the entire visit. Instead of the formal, brief interaction that usually characterized royal engagements, Queen Camilla lingered, genuinely interested in learning about the people who had created this celebration for her. She spoke with Tom Phillips about his flower arrangements, showing genuine knowledge about gardening and expressing particular admiration for his creative use of Welsh wildflowers. Tom, a man of few words who usually felt uncomfortable in formal situations, found himself chatting easily about growing seasons, soil conditions, and the challenges of creating beauty on a limited budget. With Mrs. Evans, the conversation took on an especially touching tone. The Queen carefully examined the handmade birthday card, asking about the pressed flowers and the paper crafting technique. When Mrs. Evans mentioned that she lived alone and found card making a comforting hobby, Queen Camilla spent several minutes discussing the therapeutic value of creative activities. Creativity keeps us young at heart, she observed, and your work is truly beautiful. Thank you for taking the time to make something so personal. The children received individual attention that left each one feeling special and important. Young David, age 7, proudly explained his drawing of corgis playing in a castle garden. Queen Camilla listened with the serious attention usually reserved for state matters, asking detailed questions about each dog's name and personality. They look very happy, she observed, and very well fed. I think my corgis would enjoy playing with yours. 8-year-old Sophie had drawn a picture of a family gathering around a kitchen table, with a figure wearing a crown sitting among them. When asked about her artwork, Sophie explained with perfect childhood logic, I thought you might like to have dinner with a normal family sometimes, because being important must be lonely. The innocent observation seemed to touch Queen Camilla deeply. She knelt down to Sophie's eye level and spoke softly. That's very thoughtful of you, Sophie. Sometimes it is nice to share simple moments with friends, just like today. Mrs. Williams presented the complete album of children's artwork, and Queen Camilla spent considerable time examining each page. The drawings revealed the children's perceptions of royal life. Castles surrounded by rainbows, horses running through meadows, and, surprisingly often, scenes of kindness and helping others. These show such imagination and such good hearts, she commented. I can see that you're teaching them important values about caring for others. The conversation gradually expanded to include more community members. Sarah Jenkins found herself discussing the challenges and rewards of coordinating community programs, while Dr. Morgan explained the literacy initiatives that had officially brought the Queen to their valley. But the birthday cake remained the centerpiece of the gathering, with several more pieces being shared among the volunteers and officials. The act of sharing food together seemed to break down the remaining barriers between the formal and informal aspects of the visit. Queen Camilla learned about Margaret's grandchildren, who helped with her baking projects. She heard about Tom's plans to expand the community garden. She discovered that Mrs. Evans had been a teacher for 40 years before retirement and still volunteered to help local children with reading. Each story revealed the rich tapestry of life in this small Welsh community, where people supported each other through both celebrations and challenges. The Queen found herself genuinely interested in their lives, their hopes, and their daily experiences. You know, she said at one point, addressing the entire gathered group, official visits often focus on programs and policies, which are certainly important. But today has reminded me that the heart of any community lies in the relationships between people and the kindness you show each other, and in moments like this where you come together to celebrate. The comment drew murmurs of appreciation from the group, but more than that, it seemed to validate their decision to plan this birthday surprise. They had wanted to show kindness to their royal visitor, but they were discovering that their gesture had created something much richer, a genuine connection between people who might never meet again, but would remember this moment forever. As the informal birthday party continued, something beautiful was happening. The initial nervousness that had accompanied the royal visit was completely gone, replaced by the warm atmosphere of a successful celebration where everyone felt comfortable and valued. The security personnel, initially focused on protocols and schedules, found themselves smiling at the genuine joy evident throughout the room. Even they seemed affected by the authentic happiness that surrounded the simple act of celebrating someone's birthday with care and creativity. Dr. Morgan realized that this spontaneous celebration was accomplishing something that formal programs rarely achieved. It was creating a memory that would last lifetimes and would be shared through generations of families in this community. The story would be told and retold, each time reinforcing the message that kindness matters and that every person, regardless of their position, deserves to feel celebrated. As the birthday celebration continued to unfold naturally around the beautiful cake and warm conversations, an unexpected depth began to emerge in the interactions between Queen Camilla and the Winnipia community. What had started as a planned surprise was evolving into something none of them had anticipated. A genuine exchange of stories, experiences, and perspectives that transcended the usual boundaries of royal visits. The transformation became most apparent when young Emma Roberts, emboldened by the success of the choir performance and the Queen's genuine interest in their music, asked a question that surprised everyone, including herself. "Your Majesty," she said with the directness that only teenagers possess, "do you ever feel nervous about meeting new people? Because I was terrified about conducting the choir today, but it turned out to be wonderful." The question hung in the air for a moment, its honesty creating a bridge between the formal and personal aspects of the encounter. Queen Camilla paused thoughtfully before answering, recognizing the genuine curiosity behind the question. "Oh my goodness, yes," she replied with a laugh that seemed to surprise even herself with its candidness. "Even after all these years, I still feel nervous sometimes, especially when I meet groups of people I really want to connect with. Today was one of those days, actually." The admission created a ripple of pleased surprise through the gathered community members. The idea that someone in such an elevated position could experience the same anxieties they all felt was both humanizing and comforting. "The secret," she continued, looking directly at Emma, "is that usually the people you're meeting are just as nervous as you are, and they're hoping just as much that everything goes well. Today proved that perfectly. You conducted beautifully, by the way." Margaret Davies, encouraged by this openness, found herself sharing something she hadn't planned to reveal. "Your Majesty, I must confess I made 3 practice cakes before this one. My kitchen looked like a bakery explosion by the time I got it right. My husband threatened to hide my mixing bowls." The confession brought laughter from everyone, including the Queen, who seemed delighted by the honesty. 3 practice cakes? That makes this one even more special, knowing how much effort went into perfecting it. Although I do feel sorry for your husband's waistline. The exchange opened a floodgate of similar admissions. Tom Phillips revealed that he had rearranged his flower displays 4 times before settling on the final version. Mrs. Evans confessed that she had written 7 drafts of the message in her birthday card before feeling satisfied with the words. Even Sarah Jenkins admitted that she had barely slept for a week, worrying about every detail of the arrangements. It sounds like this entire community was in a state of wonderful anxiety over my visit, Queen Camilla observed with warm amusement. "I'm incredibly touched that you all cared so much about making today special." The conversation naturally moved toward more personal topics as the formal barriers continued to dissolve. When Mrs. Evans mentioned that she had been widowed 3 years earlier and sometimes struggled with loneliness, Queen Camilla's response was immediate and heartfelt. "I understand that feeling more than you might expect," she said gently. "Life brings us all periods of loneliness, regardless of our circumstances. What I've learned is that reaching out to others, as you've all done today, is often the best remedy for both the giver and the receiver." The comment revealed a vulnerability that surprised everyone present. They had expected formality, graciousness, and royal protocol, but they were witnessing something much more valuable: authentic human connection. Dr. Morgan, who had initially worried about how the community's additions to the official program might be received, found herself fascinated by the conversation that was developing. As an educator, she recognized something remarkable happening. People from completely different worlds were finding common ground through shared experiences of nervousness, effort, and the universal desire to make others feel valued. Sarah Jenkins, still marveling at how naturally the conversation was flowing, decided to share something that had been on her mind throughout the planning process. "Your Majesty, when we learned that your birthday coincided with your visit, we couldn't bear the thought of you working on your special day without any recognition. Everyone deserves to feel celebrated on their birthday. That sentiment means more to me than you can possibly know," Queen Camilla replied, her voice carrying genuine emotion. Birthdays can become quite complicated when you're in public life. Today has reminded me of what birthdays should really be about, feeling appreciated by people who care about you. The Queen then surprised everyone by sharing a story from her own childhood birthdays in Wales. She had spent summers with relatives in the Welsh countryside and remembered the simple joy of community celebrations where everyone knew everyone else, where birthdays were marked by homemade cakes and genuine affection rather than formal ceremonies. Those summers taught me that the best celebrations happen when people come together with generous hearts, she reflected. Today has brought back those wonderful memories. Young David, the 7-year-old artist who had drawn the corgis, had been listening intently to the adult conversation. With the fearlessness of childhood, he walked directly up to the Queen and asked, "Do your dogs have birthday parties too?" The question delighted Queen Camilla, who immediately launched into stories about her beloved corgis and their various personalities. She described their individual preferences for treats, their playful interactions, and, yes, she confessed with amusement, they did indeed have special celebrations for their birthdays. Pembroke always gets jealous when it's not his birthday, she explained to David with complete seriousness. We've learned to give all of them small treats on each birthday to prevent sulking. The image of royal corgis sulking over birthday inequality brought laughter from everyone, but, more importantly, it revealed the Queen's capacity for finding joy in simple, everyday moments with her beloved pets. Mrs. Williams, the primary school teacher, saw an educational opportunity in the conversation and gently asked if the Queen had any advice for the children about pursuing their dreams. The response that followed would be remembered and quoted by these children for years to come. The most important thing, Queen Camilla said, addressing the children directly, is to be kind to others while you're working toward your dreams. Success means nothing if you haven't learned to care about people along the way. Today has shown me that you're already learning that lesson beautifully. The conversation had been flowing so naturally that everyone was surprised when the Royal Protection Officer discreetly approached Dr. Morgan to indicate that the scheduled time for departure was approaching. The realization that their magical afternoon was nearing its end brought a collective sense of disappointment. But Queen Camilla had noticed the subtle signal as well, and she addressed the group with obvious reluctance to leave. "I cannot remember when I've enjoyed a birthday celebration more," she said sincerely. "You've given me something precious today, the reminder that genuine kindness and community spirit are the most valuable gifts anyone can receive." She turned to Margaret with a special request. "I meant what I said about that recipe. Would you be willing to share it? I have a feeling this cake recipe might become something rather special in my kitchen." Margaret's face glowed with pride as she promised to send the detailed recipe, including all her secret techniques for achieving the perfect texture and flavor balance. The Queen then addressed Emma Roberts directly. "Your choir was absolutely wonderful. Music has such power to bring people together and create joy. I hope you continue developing that gift." To Tom Phillips, she said, "Your flower arrangements have made this space absolutely beautiful. You have a true artist's eye for creating beauty from nature." And to Mrs. Evans, she added, "Your card will be treasured not just for its beauty, but for the kindness it represents. Thank you for taking the time to create something so personal." As the moment for departure arrived, something unprecedented occurred. Instead of the formal farewells that typically concluded royal visits, Queen Camilla moved through the group, personally thanking each person and sharing a brief, warm exchange. The children received individual attention, the adults felt genuinely seen and appreciated, and everyone present understood that they had been part of something extraordinary. The birthday cake, with its ceremonial first slice removed, would be shared among the community members after the Queen's departure, ensuring that the celebration would continue and that everyone who had contributed to the surprise would have the chance to enjoy the fruits of their collective effort. But the cake itself had already served its most important purpose. It had created a bridge between worlds, facilitated genuine human connection, and proved that kindness, when offered with sincere hearts, has the power to transform ordinary moments into memories that last lifetimes.